so many errors and inconsistencies in the ball model. This one I really like. So on a solar eclipse, people on the spinning ball, they believe that the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon and 400 times further away. It's just a coincidence that they appear exactly the same size and exactly the same location in the sky. I, like many other flat earth people, we believe that the sun and moon are the same size, about 30 miles wide, between 700 and 1,000, 2,000 miles away. So, if we're in the spinning globes model, we've got this giant sun and this small earth, and the rays would hit us like this. Because the sun's so much bigger than the earth, it would have one direct sun ray hitting the earth at the same angle. They tell us it's 93 million miles away. So then how come we see things like this in the sky? See, it should be hitting us directly, and it appears like this. And what they say is, what the mainstream spinning globe says, it says refraction. And I'm like, okay, I understand that light bends in glass and that light bends in water. I understand that, that's real. We can replicate that. But it doesn't mean crepuscular rays. It's again a massive leap of faith to say light bends in water, therefore crepuscular rays. And crepuscular rays is like gravity and refraction. It's another one of those talismanic words. We don't really know about crepuscular rays. For me, it's just, that's where the sun is. That's where it is, bro. It's like not that far away. And a lot of people are running around shouting 93 million miles away for the sun, but over time, this number's moved all over the show. Copernicus said it was 3 million, Newton changed his mind, said 28, 54. They just don't know. And they can't prove it's 93 million miles away. There's no device that proves that. There's no sensor. There's no actual proof. For me, this is why they put this model into us when we're like 4, 5, 6 years old, because that's when our subconscious is really spongy. So we can all agree there that the train tracks don't actually join together. So that's what I'm talking about, perspective and vanishing point. And for me, the sun doesn't rise and it doesn't set. The sun comes and the sun goes. The sun goes. And that's what many ancient scriptures say. Now, people will also say, well, I've seen it actually set. Now, I'm showing you there the sun gets smaller. But here, I can get a 10p piece on this table, and if you put your eye to the level of the table, and I move that 10p across, it will look like 10 pence is setting. Does that make sense? Because the sun doesn't go down, it just goes away. Just like that 10 pence piece is doing. And that 10 pence piece looks like it's setting below the table's horizon. And for me, that's what's going on. I've created a Facebook group looking at the luminaries, which means anything in the sky that shines. And so, a couple of thousand people in there looking at the stars and the moon. And they've done these synchronized moon photos. So at the same time, someone in New Zealand and Florida took a photo of the moon. And that's not possible on a spinning ball. What you can see here is the moon is rotated though. And I'll explain that a bit later. There's another one, I could show you hundreds of these. Australia and Florida can both see the moon at the same time. That's not possible on a spinning globe. The moon also, it doesn't have this reflection hotspot. So what they say is that the moon's brightness is a reflection of the sun. I disagree with this. I've written a free ebook online about the moon, sitting upon a flat earth perspective, and the moon self-illuminates. I know how crazy that might sound to some of you, but the moon self-illuminates, just like a star does. It's a self-illuminating thing. And whether it's in what phase is due to its electromagnetic relationship with the sun. So people believe the moon's 238,000 miles away, but we can see certain details on the moon with our own eyes. Now, your eye can't see 238,000 miles away. Your eye can't do that. It's like with satellites. We've all seen these white things in the sky move around, and we say, oh look, there's a satellite. But these are like 400, 500 miles away, between 350 and 600 miles away, each one at a different sort of altitude, they say. And they're all about the size of a car, size of a truck. Your human eye cannot see something the size of a truck 400 miles away. Your eye isn't that good. These are high altitude drones or something like this. Water, very interesting. Never bends, never bends. It's always flat. The top right image is from a famous Bedford level experiment, which was done early 1900s, I think, where they put flags all the way along this canal for about 28 miles, and with a telescope they could see all the flags. This is a famous flat earth experiment. Water always finds its level. Water doesn't care for anything else going on, it will just find its level. All rivers go to the sea. Now, this one foxed me for a while when I come across this, because on a spinning ball, or even just on a ball, some seas would go into the river. It'd be around 50-50. Some seas would go into the river, some rivers would go into the sea. This for me is a big flat earth proof that all rivers go into the sea. But you might just have to go and sit and think about it, like I had to. So, what we got is these three options here. I'm with the bottom one. The bottom one sort of feels logical to me. That's what I see, that's what I go through with direct experience. What the spinning globes people, they're with the top one. So that they believe, I'm not making this up, they believe if they stand in America and look to Hawaii, that water's just going up, curving, and then going down for about 4 miles. 4 miles up, 4 miles down. They believe there's a big hump of water in front of them. And that for me is a bit mad. It's a bit madness. I mean, you know, maybe go and see a doctor. Say, I'm in the spinning globes. I've got some problems. Could you have a show of hands? Who's actually with the top one there? It's okay. I mean, I was for decades. That's all right. That's cool. Satellites is a big one. Now, around England and Europe, you can see a lot of these dishes, and they're sort of pointing horizontal. And you're like, well, that's kind of strange. This again is England, and I think in England a lot of satellite dishes point southeast, where, funnily enough, in Luxembourg there are some giant antennas. I've forgotten the actual abbreviation, but in Luxembourg, I believe all these satellite dishes are pointing to a giant antenna in Luxembourg. And in the early 1900s, they started building a lot of skyscrapers. I mean, especially in America, Middle East. There was no real need because there's a lot of room in America, but they built all these skyscrapers, and funnily enough, each one had giant antennas on the top. Dubai, on the flat earth map, Dubai is like a gateway. It's like a gateway between mass populations, and Dubai for me is just a big array of antennas to repeat information. There's also a lot of, I mean, if satellites really existed, why are there loads of masts in the oceans? It's very real. This is a map of underwater fibre cables for the internet. The whole internet runs on underwater cables. This isn't conspiracy, this is real. Satellites don't exist. I don't always use satellites for worldwide communication, but when I do, I use thousands of miles of cable. I was actually at Heathrow the other day. I don't know if you can see the writing there by Tata, a very large corporate company. We connect commerce across the globe on the world's largest wholly owned subsea fibre network. So they're even coming out and being public about this now. Then people say to me, well, satellites, Mark. They say, well, what about Google Earth? Like, surely. And I'm like, well, when you load up Google Earth, first thing you see is it's a cartoon Earth. I mean, the top image there, that's not real. We can all agree on that. That's a cartoon, it's CGI. And I did a bit of research, and Google own loads of planes. They own a whole fleet of planes. And when you zoom in on Google Earth, and you come across the town, you know, that is a photo, I agree that is a photo, That's not high altitude, that's just like 2 or 3 miles up. If you look at that bottom image, that's not from space. You don't need to be in space to take that image. That's like 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet. So, I was looking into this satellite thing, and what they said was there's around 10, it depends where you look, they say there's between 8 and 20,000 satellites in space. None of them ever hit each other. None of them get hit by meteorites. None of them hit the supposed International Space Station. And I went to see the scientist and I said, can you tell me how a satellite gets into orbit? Why does gravity not pull it back to Earth? And why does the vacuum space not allow it to fly off? I said, how does it actually, in outer space, stay in orbit? Whether that's orbiting or geocentric, where it stays in its place relative to the Earth. He said to me, clever thrusters. And I said, is that all you got? And this was a scientist. And he said, it's clever thrusters, Mark, beyond your intelligence. In a vacuum. And I said to him, okay, mate. I said, let's go with clever thrusters. How does the vacuum of space not suck out the fuel? He said, clever valves. Serious. So like, if a submarine moves by pushing against water, a plane pushes against air, but in a vacuum, let's go with this clever thrusters and clever valves. What's it actually pushing against? Like if you see a remote control helicopter in a vacuum, that thing's just going to spin all over the place. So if you had these clever thrusters, clever valves, and you went into a vacuum and you pressed your thruster, you would just spin. You wouldn't go straight, because nothing's completely equally balanced. You can't get anything completely equal. So it would just spin, and then you do your thruster again, and you just spin the other way. You would just end up in a very chaotic spin. And I'm sure none of you have seen a remote control plane or a remote control rocket in a vacuum. None of us have seen that. It's just madness to think that we can burn fuel in space, in a vacuum. Vacuums don't work like that. So, I mean, I could do hours on NASA and ESA, but I'm just going to do a little bit. Online, I've got an ESA hoax series, 10 parts looking at Tim Peake's whole journey, and I've talked